Hey folks, it's Mr. Parsons here. Last week, we had a class discussion on the topic of racial identity, exploring that theme through three pieces of literature. Now it's time to highlight some of the great work that was done during this assignment. I want to start on slide 3. On slide 3, we see Jin eating alone in the lunch yard, and we see other students playing and having fun without him. The question that was posed to students was, are these students ignoring Jin or are they just playing and having fun? Yahir Reyes from my second hour writes, I think they are doing both because the kids are just having fun, but they are ignoring him by not asking him to play even when they see he is alone. This is a really important point that Yahir makes. They are not including him, and so as a result of that, they are excluding him. Even though it's unintentional, they're not necessarily intentionally excluding him. By not being inclusive, that is the end result. So the key here is, regardless of whether it's racial identity or any other type of identity that a person holds, we act inclusively, and that way our school is a better, more happy, and more unified place. Which brings me to the next slide, where there was some excellent work being done. How can schools impact the way that students see their racial identity? Alberto Zambrano from my second hour writes, schools can make a good impact by showing students why they should be proud of their racial identity. And Jada agrees and says, I agree because schools can be the students' only way to talk about racial identity and feel comfortable. We know that schools have the potential to help students feel good about their identities, whatever that identity may be. But we control how that turns out for people with the way that we act, whether we're inclusive or not. Jesus from my third hour writes, what I think is that not everybody probably knows about what racial identity means because it's different for everyone. I think this is a really valid point that Jesus makes. Because it's a spectrum and no two people feel exactly the same about their racial identity, even if they belong to the same race, because it is such an individual thing. We have to just be inclusive to all people, regardless of their background, and that way, everybody feels welcome. I want to take some time now to highlight some of the work that was done on the Flipgrid. So let's
Hey,
take
this
a
is
look at.
Terry. I'm doing a quest. I mean, not the quest. The space. Explain which text would you recommend to appear and why. I would recommend American Born Chinese because I don't know. It spoke to me. It showed those kids' influence, their parents' influence. How they were saying, my mom says y'all eat dogs and stuff. That influenced the kids into thinking that they really do that. It shows that we need to grow as a community.
I think the part that impacted me was when Jin's teacher assumed different stuff about Jin because of his racial identity and his appearance, and when the teacher didn't do anything about the rumors spreading around school. I feel like this impacted me because I feel like the teacher should have done something about the rumors or should have been more welcoming towards the new student since he comes from a different background than most of the class.
All right. Hey, Mr. Parson. All right. Basically, the first thing I thought about when reading all three books were like, oh, is it gonna be like, oh, this one kid gets bullied for being different? But no, they all have like individual stories.
One of the books that we read in class that had an impact on me was Mexican White Boy because in the book, Danny struggles with his racial identity, as in he um, compares his skin tone to the his class his white classmates and his family that is much darker than him. I know like a lot of people also um, can relate to that. Like they feel like they're not like the stereotypical brown that people expect all Mexicans or Latinos to be. And I feel like that just like reminded me of other people's experiences.